All right, before we lose our mind, the very last thing to talk about on these shows is the big David Young, Mike Posey feud. The one you've been waiting to talk about, Liam. Big DK, Mike Posey.
Donkey Kong?
DK stands for dropkick. July 7th, pay-per-view, you had the Shark Boy and D-Ray losing to Michael Shane and Kazarian. After the match, David Young comes out to shout at Mike Posey. Young slaps him. Posey fires up. Posey runs wild until Swinger and Disco come out. Young drops Posey with a spine buster before Shark Boy and D-Ray make the save.
I'm a hooting and hollering, baby.
July 14th, pay-per-view opens with Vito shouting at Disco for not being Italian enough. He's like, you're a failure of an Italian.
Arrivederci.
Then Gilberti's like, it's not my fault, it's David Young's fault, he's a horrible loser. And then David Young's like, it's not my fault, it's Mike Posey's fault, he's ruining my life.
David Young isn't even Italian.
Vito wants none of Young because he's not Italian. That's the story. Vito says Gilberti and Swinger better get their act together or he'll literally kill them. He's like, you will end up in the boot of my car.
Maybe he's just gonna drive them somewhere.
David Young is shouting at Mike Posey. Gilberti and Swinger join him. Posey gets a broom, clears house. Shark Boy D-Ray make the save. Same pretty much angle as last week.
I like that this doesn't touch Impact.
No, the David Young is not on Impact. Glenn Gilberti is not on Impact. Swinger should be on Impact. He should be just showing off his pecs, which is basically what he does all month.
Of course.
Just stands there flexing. So NWA-TNA baby number 104, July 21. Hudson has Young and Swinger. Gilberti's not there. He's in Hawaii. TNA advertising for this match, by the way, knowing he'd be in Hawaii. He has a booking in Hawaii. They were like, he's not going to be able to be there. But we're going to advertise him for this match anyway.
Don't worry, I don't think anyone's buying the pay-per-view for that.
I was going to say, probably under the assumption that no one will give a fuck if he's not there. And if anything, they might be happier. So David Young, he's gotten to about the referees. Then Shark Boy, D-Ray, and Mike Posey defeat David Young and Johnny Swinger in a 3-on-2 handicap match because Gilberti was meant to be there but didn't show up because he was in Hawaii. Posey dropkicks D-Ray into the pin on Young. 0-87 is now Young's record. Young grabbed a microphone. He asks for one more match against Posey and also blames Disco for losing. And if Young doesn't win that match against Posey, he'll leave TNA forever!
Until 2022.
Until his big reverse battle royal return, you're right. He did actually state that. He's like, if I lose to Mike Posey, I'll leave TNA forever, except I want to do one more match in like 18 years on the pre-show of the 20th anniversary show.
Which, hey, fair play for him being specific and putting it in the contract.
July 28th, we had a backstage promo. Hudson had David Young. Young didn't want to hear about Gilberti, didn't want to hear from Gilberti.
I appreciate that he's like, this guy is a toxic friend, and I'm trying to sever ties.
I also still appreciate that the entire Glenn Gilberti character is a fucking dumbass idiot who everyone thinks is stupid other than himself.
Even David Young. Yeah. Imagine getting owned consistently by David Young.
Literally cuts a promo here being like, there is nobody in the world who would make me want to hear about or from the Disco Inferno.
Which I agree.
Young says he'll get a job in a 7-Eleven if he can't beat the referee. Glenn shows up and he's like, we need to help each other. We're both on the gut checklist. There's a referee conspiracy. They were bundling together there to talk about how they can beat you.
Which is probably true. But also, fine.
Which brings us to the match we've been building to for like 6 weeks. The match that the world has been waiting for. Mike Posey versus David Young. Posey dropkicked Young into Gilberti on the apron, rolled him up. Liam's given me nothing. He's got nothing left on this show. I am like CM Punk at the moment, at the end of my tether. I'm sick of carrying this company single-handedly. This entire podcast, I put it on my back, working with a bunch of young pricks who don't have a brain in their head. And I'm here by myself talking about Mike Posey and David Young at 3:28 in the morning, 3 hours, 46 minutes into this podcast recording.
I'm going to kick the shit out of you and your dog.
We're going to fight. Who's your friend that's going to bite me? That's the question.
Griffin.
So yeah, Posey dropkicked Young into Gilberti on the apron, rolled him up, scored the win. Gilberti pushed Young a bunch. He's mad that he lost, but then Young fought back. Swinger came out, sided with Disco. They beat down Young 2-on-1, and they shoved the gut checklist in his mouth, as that is all the developments of this feud for this month.
Is David Young done?
No.
Thank God. I want to give David Young a proper, goodbye. and I can't do that now.
You have about another 2 years of David Young. You're fine.
What the fuck?
Even though he just lost this, if I lose to a referee, I'll never show up again match.
I thought David Young was like
But
gone.
he did a babyface turn after, so he's fine.
Alright, well, let's give Black Label Pro a little shout out.
Oh yeah, he's booked on one of their upcoming shows. Go watch David Young and Black Label Pro.
In the Turbo 16. Which I believe that opens the door of a chance of a Shun Skywalker versus David Young match.
Do it.
Which needs to happen.
If they book anything else, I'll be upset.
Top 10 wrestler of the year, Shun Skywalker and David Young needs to happen.